Thank you to Hoshanho Knives for sponsoring this Bloomin' video. This is gonna be really cool, so you guys stick around for this. So when Hoshanho said they were gonna send me this knife set and they wanted me to showcase how sharp it was, I got this really cool idea for a steak and also an onion side that you guys have probably heard something kind of like this, at least in some sense, but this is a completely different way of doing it. I used to work waiting tables at Outback Steakhouse, and the Bloomin' Onion was one of my favorite things to get there back in my standard American diet days. But it's full of flour, gluten, carbs, all the things we don't want. And I decided that it would be fun to try to do a keto version of this for you guys, but then that also gave me an idea. Outback has all of these bloomin' this, bloomin' that sort of dishes that they've done throughout the years because of the popularity of their bloom spice and their bloomin' batter and the bloomin' onion as an appetizer. So we are going to do bloomin' ribeyes and a keto bloomin' onion. So whether you are a carnivore, a keto person, maybe someone who's just trying to get rid of the gluten or up their protein intake, whatever your reason for doing this, this is your recipe and it's something fun. And I'm going to show you just how sharp these knives are because this is very simple when you have a good knife in the kitchen. So let's go ahead and do it. Bloomin' ribeyes and the keto bloomin' onion today on Chris Cookin' Nashville. So first things first, I've got to show you guys how to cut the steak and the onion into these sorts of shapes, and we are going to show you how great these Hoshanho knives are so you can go and pick yourself up a set. They have a bunch of different individual knives. They have this beautiful set that they sent me that has a chef's knife, a boning knife, a santoku, an akiri knife, kitchen shears, it has a slicing knife, it has a paring knife, it has steak knives, it has so many great things in it that make this kind of stuff really simple. And I'm going to show you how the chef's knife, which is what I use to do this, is so sharp, it makes this a breeze. But let's talk about how we cut the steak, how we cut the onion, and then I'll show you how we actually bread them and fry them so we can make the bloomin' ribeye and the bloomin' onion. And Outback, if you guys are watching and you want to use this recipe, feel free to give me a call. I'm sure we can work something out since this one was my idea. Let's go ahead and start with the steak first, and then we'll talk about how we prep that onion, and then I'll show you how we cook them both. This is a beautiful ribeye steak, and I went to the store, I got some ribeyes to do this. You could do this with any other cut of steak that you would like, but I do recommend you get something thick cut. It is going to make this much more simple to cut the steak properly. We're going to use the chef's knife from the Hoshanho knife set. This is beautiful. This is the long series. It has beautiful palm swells in the handles of the knives. There's a really great notch where your finger sits very comfortably. These are very well balanced and they're lightweight, but they are firm and solid. They are very easy to use, and it makes doing something like this very simple. What we're going to do is take our ribeye, we're going to lay it out flat. Now I salted these, and these have been dry brined, so they are seasoned all the way through. I did not do overnight. I just dry brined these for 6 to 7 hours, but that at least seasons it all the way through and gets rid of some of the extra moisture on the outside. I have patted them dry just to make them a little bit easier to handle, but we're going to deal with any extra moisture on the surface in a totally different way than we would normally deal with this on a steak in just a bit. What we're going to do is we're going to cut a cross hatch pattern across our ribeye, and this is what's going to allow it to open up and bloom very much like that bloomin' onion with all the petals. We're going to take the steak. Now a ribeye like this is long, so you may have to adjust how you do this depending on what kind of steak you're using. Left to right, lengthwise, we're going to turn it at about a 45-degree angle so that we can cut 45-degree angle slices across this steak. steak. And then we will finish by turning it 45 degrees the other way, doing the same thing. So we get this nice 45-degree angled diamond pattern across the steak. But the key to this is to make sure you don't cut all the way through. I'm going to show you how to do that, because if you cut all the way through, it's going to fall apart. It's not going to do us any good and hold together properly. So get a nice sharp knife, and if you're looking for one, go pick up one of these Hoshanho sets or one of their knives with the link I have in the description box for you guys. We are going to, about every ½ inch, cut a slice down through the steak. And what's cool is because these knives are so sharp, I can do this with relatively little pressure, and I can do it really carefully to make sure I don't slice all the way through. We're gonna go about 2/3 of the way down into the steak, leaving maybe 1/4 to 1/2 inch of steak at the bottom of this thick cut ribeye that I have not cut through. And that's what's gonna hold together and allow us to create this bloom shape that I'm gonna show you guys how to do in just a minute. These knives are so sharp, I have to use almost no pressure, and I'm being really careful to not put a bunch of pressure and try to do this all in one motion, because the knife is so sharp, it will cut all the way through the steak right to the cutting board, and I don't wanna do that. So I'm carefully going through and slicing about 2/3 of the way through the steak. And you can see when I pull that it opens up, but that is not all the way to the bottom. That is about 2/3 of the way down. That is exactly what we're looking for. I'm just gonna do that all the way across the steak, about every ½ inch. And I'm gonna be real careful because, like I said, these knives are so sharp, they will immediately slice all the way through the steak. Really good chef's knife is one of the best things you can have in the kitchen, especially if you want to do something really special and out there like this. And Hoshanho has done a really good job making sure these are not only comfortable to use, but they show up extremely, extremely razor sharp. And I love that. Okay, so we have gone all the way across the steak and we have cut those folds. Now you can see the steak starts to open up into slices. But we're not done yet. We're going to turn this, instead of this way like I was just cutting, we're gonna turn it 45 degrees the other way, and we're gonna go across, do the exact same thing. Be really careful, because as you're getting into these thinner bits of steak, it can slice right through without you meaning to. So very carefully, very little pressure, just letting the knife do the work. I'm just pulling back through, resetting and pulling through again, going about 2/3 of the way down, but being careful not to go any further. And this will create the petals for our bloomin' steak. Before we can actually fry it though, and bread it and get it cooked properly, we need to turn it into this bloomin' shape that I have over here. The way we're gonna do that is we're actually gonna flip this upside down, and we're going to use butcher's twine. We're going to pull the steak, the top and the bottom of this ribeye, along the long side. We're going to carefully pull this up, and we're going to tie it into a cylinder sort of shape, because when we pull it up just like this, it opens all of those petals, kind of like a porcupine on the other side with all of his quills sticking up. That is going to allow us to get the mixture that makes the breading and the seasoning and all of the tasty crispiness of a bloomin' onion that we're going to use to make our bloomin' steak down inside all of the crevices, so we can get all of those crispy petals of steak. 3 to 4 pieces of butcher's twine should be plenty. It is up to you, depending on the size of steak that you are using, how many pieces you want to use to hold it together. So we get sort of a C-shaped curve on the back side of the steak. Once those 3 pieces of butcher's twine are tied, we can come in here now. I just double knotted them so we can trim off those extra ends just so they're not in our way. And again, you can see how sharp the knife is, how great of a job that does. Makes it really nice when you don't have to fight with your kitchen gear, because it just works. Once we have those tied, we can flip the steak back over, and there is our bloomed ribeye. And we can kind of go in, and if there's any petals that maybe you didn't cut quite deep enough, or there's a spot where it just seems a little tighter, there's extra fat, whatever, you can just real carefully slide the knife in there and cut just slightly deeper, just to free that up a little bit, until you get this beautiful bloomed ribeye roll. That is what we are going to bread and fry. I'm going to go ahead and grab the onion for the keto folks. We're going to do the Keto Bloomin Onion. I'm going to show you how to cut that. Very similar idea, but done with a very different technique than the steak. If you're not into the keto stuff, you can go ahead and skip to where we start to batter and fry because it works the same for the steak and the onions both. If you're into the keto stuff and you want to try the bloomin' onion, let's talk about how we cut that next. So to cut our onion for the bloomin' onion is actually very similar to what we did with the steak, but we do it in a different way because the petals are actually already inside the onion if we know how to cut it properly. Step number one, we're going to very carefully slice the top of the onion off, just a little bit, enough that we can peel it, but not so much that we're losing out much of the onion that we're eating. We are not going to remove the root. We are just going to peel the papery, tough outer layer of the onion off while leaving the root intact, because the root at the bottom of the onion, the little frilly hairy bit, is what's going to hold the petals together when we go to bread and fry this onion as a flower, as the bloomin' onion that we've all come to expect. So once you've peeled the outside of the onion and you have that little slice taken off the top, you're actually going to lay the onion with its top down, that flat cut side down on the cutting board. When you do that, you're going to look at the bottom of the onion, the root side, and we're going to imagine this being like a clock. And so we are going to make cuts at 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. And we're not going to cut through the root. We're going to come right up to the root and then go straight down so that we don't actually cut and detach any of these pieces. Make your first cut down, turn it 90 degrees, cut down through the 6 o'clock or 12 o'clock, whichever one you didn't already do, turn it 90 degrees, cut down again, turn 90 degrees, cut down again. Now you have 4 sections of your onion. And all we need to do is keep now cutting sections in half. So we'll cut down the middle of each of these 4 petals. And if you want to go even further, instead of having 8 petals total, you can have 16 by cutting each of those in half. And that is what I have done here. I have cut 16 petals all the way around. And the other thing that I did is I put this in a bowl of ice salt water, and we soaked this for about 30 minutes. This does a couple of things. One, it's going to help firm up the onion slightly, which is going to make it stay together a little bit better. Also going to encourage that bloom when we go to fry this. And one of the other things it does is when you soak an onion in salt water like that, the salt helps pull out some of the harshness of the onion, which makes it taste a little bit nicer and a little bit sweeter. And I'm also going to go through now and just very carefully pull on these petals just to make sure that they have been separated, but not so hard that I break any of them. It is time for us to bread and fry our onion and our bloomin' steak. The recipe for the dry mixture, the wet mixture, and the seasoning mixture, which is the key, will all be on the recipe card that is linked in the description box down below. So you can go get all of the amounts. It's totally free. It's there on my website for you. I'm also going to throw on there the bloomin' onion sauce, my version of the bloomin' onion sauce done in a keto-friendly way. So if you want to have the full bloomin' experience, just like you were sitting in an Outback Steakhouse, you can totally do that without the carbs and the sugar and the junk we're trying to avoid. Done keto and carnivore style. I'm bringing a heavy bottom pot of my frying fat up to temperature. You can use whatever kind of oil or fat you would like to fry in. My preference is beef tallow. You can use lard, you could use ghee, you could use avocado oil if that's something you're into, whatever you want. We're gonna bring this up to 350 degrees. While we are waiting for that, I'm gonna go ahead and mix up the bloom sauce, which is gonna go in the refrigerator and chill out while we fry everything, so it's all ready to go. So I have some of my spreadable butter mayo in here, and I put in some vinegar as well. All of the amounts are on that recipe card for you for free on the website. It's linked in the description box. To this, I'm going to add some no sugar ketchup. I'm going to add some prepared horseradish. Make sure to double check and make sure yours does not have added sugar. Read the label. And I have a spice mixture which has paprika, garlic powder, cayenne pepper, onion powder, black pepper, and then I'm going to adjust it to taste with salt. Then we're just gonna mix this up and we're gonna let it chill in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes. Honestly, overnight would probably be better. This tastes perfect to me, so I'm not gonna add any salt to it. I'm just gonna let it sit in the refrigerator so all the flavors can come together so it's ready to go when it's time to dip our steak or bloomin' onion. In this bowl, I have my liquid mixture, which is just eggs, a little bit of cream, and some of the Bloom seasoning, which is on the recipe card as well. In this bowl is my dry mixture. This is a combination of whey protein isolate and egg white powder, and I'm gonna add some of my Bloom seasoning to that as well. Now you can do this with just whey isolate, just not gonna be as crispy. That little bit of egg white powder in there makes a really big difference, and I do recommend you do that if you are able to do so. So I'm going to add in a couple of tablespoons of this Bloom seasoning into my dry mixture. We're just going to mix that all together, and then you can dip and fry. I'm going to show you how we do that. Anywhere from 340 to 350 for the onion, and 350 all the way maybe to 370 for the steak is going to be ideal. For the onion first, we're going to put the onion in the dry mixture. I'm going to sprinkle dry mixture all down through the petals. Then it goes into the wet mixture. We get it nice and coated, back into the dry mixture to get a nice coating, and then it goes into fry. And make sure you have something like one of these spiders or something to lift the whole thing out, because you're going to need something to get it out of there. And once it is fried deep golden brown, we're going to put it on a rack to drain so that it does not get squishy. My fat is up to temperature for the steaks. I'm gonna do the exact same thing. Dry first, that's just gonna help the wet mixture bond to it. Then the wet mixture, which helps us go back into the dry mixture to get a thicker crust so we can get that signature bloomin' sort of crunch. Get a couple of these fancy Hoshanho steak knives here.
Ooh,
look at those.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like these. Yeah.
You ready for a bloomin' feast?
Yes. I'm so excited right now. I can barely contain it. I used to eat these like every day, all day. Look at that. Look at that. You have created an actual bloomin' onion. I literally feel like I'm sitting at Outback right now. You nailed the sauce. Literally, this tastes just like a bloomin' onion. Like I would go sit at Outback and eat all the time. And I love that I can eat this and not feel terrible afterwards.
Yep.
Wow. I'm going to devour that.
That's fantastic. I'm really excited about this steak though.
Let's do it.
So I was able to keep these like a medium rare to rare by not over frying them with that temperature.
I just picked up this knife, went to go use it.
Slices right through.
I don't even have to put pressure. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
First thing I've noticed.
These are incredible knives.
The knives are awesome. Let's try the steak.
Oh yeah.
Stop.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. How is this not a thing? I may cry. Tears are welling up. That is how freaking good that is. Holy
That is
cow.
a special way to have a steak.
The steak is tender and moist and juicy. And then the outside, it is totally that bloomin' onion breading. And you get like the seasoning and the flavor and the taste. And then it's like kind of crunchy on the outside. And then like you dip it in that sauce. I'm done. Holy cow. This is my favorite thing that you have ever made, period. That's it. You can make this every night of the week. Thank you so much.
That is amazing. This is definitely a more complicated way of doing a steak, and I get that. So if you're looking for something that's maybe a simpler way of doing a steak because you want your steak to be incredible, but maybe not quite so involved because it's not quite as special as this, totally fine. You gotta go check out this video right over here. This is Chris cooking Nashville and the beautiful Ash Taylor. Eat your meat, love your life, and we'll see you here for more crazy recipes just like this one.
Can I say that this is bloomin' fantastic?